Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the second part of our four-part series on Practical Kashrus Series, and I'd like to especially congratulate those of you here this evening who've attended a Beit Midrash Shiur event every single night this week, because we have something on every single night this week, so congratulate to those of you who are still in the game. For the benefit of those watching on the video, I'd like to thank all 1,000 people who've attended tonight. It's our great pleasure to have the General Manager of Kosher Australia, Mr. Yankel Wajsbort, with us. Kashrut is a huge operation. To run a Kashrut authority requires many people, a lot of manpower, a lot of expertise, a lot of knowledge, a lot of contacts, a huge amount of effort, and that's just to maintain the current level of supervision and products which are supplied, let alone to continue developing and continue growing and to continue improving the services which are provided. And under Yankel's expert leadership, that's the way Kosher Australia has gone. Really, more and more products all the time, constantly expanding the operation, overseeing what really is a very, very large operation. He's an absolute expert in his field, and it's a pleasure that Yankel's here this evening to present to us.
Thank you, Rabbi Mervis. You were talking about me, were you? Okay. Before we start, I was going to put a whole bunch of PowerPoints up, and I thought, no, it's much easier. This is a nicer environment than going to another area where you have to put PowerPoints. So I've got my notes. Anyone who wants the notes afterwards, happy to share them. They're just bullet points. So the topic tonight, and I have to thank Rabbi Baskin, who's not here, for bequesting me this topic of kosher shopping made easy. I love him. Or as I prefer to go by, how to shop kosher without having a nervous breakdown. No jokes. Okay. Okay, before we start, it was, and just as an anecdote, and someone mentioned before that shopping tends to be the purview of one gender rather than the other, which in my household, yes, I get to do all the shopping for obvious reasons, is that people, kosher consumers, tend to be very much driven by finding kosher food. So we had one of the fellows who works with us was on a ski trip last week, and he comes back. He comes back into the office on Tuesday morning after he's a few days away, Mount Buller, I think, and he says, "Yeah, Uncle, I'm so excited." And I said, "What's the story?" He says, "There's a little shop in the ski resort, like, 2 men and a dog shop, and they had Yumi's dips, and they had Alpine bread, and they had all these products which are all kosher." And he says, "It's fantastic." I can never see a 22-year-old excited about food like that. And I remember about 5 or 6 years, 6 years ago, we went to my daughter's wedding in Florida, and on the way we stopped in LA for about 3 or 4 days. And my brother-in-law, who sadly is not particularly observant, he was like astounded because all of us guys, so myself and my 2 adult sons at that stage, we were staying with them, and it's like all the time, where can we find kosher food? Where's the kosher restaurant? Where's the kosher supermarket? So we're always on the prowl for kosher food, and it's something like kosher consumers are sort of driven to find kosher food anywhere. So I just thought that's an interesting anecdote, which has probably nothing to do at all what we're talking about, but anyway. So the first thing I'd like to cover is the general concept about kosher. Question everyone asks, we get dozens of phone calls in the office, and people ask, is this salt kosher? Is this sugar kosher? My bottled water does have to be kosher. We get questions like, does the toilet cleaner need to be kosher, and things like that. So the first obvious question is, does everything need to be kosher certified? Are you going shopping? Do I have to actually look for kosher products all the time? And the answer, of course, is no. You only really need to look for products which need to be kosher. So what does kosher mean? Not from a halachic perspective, but from a practical perspective. So Morty Hunders, who works for me, he has a very good example. You have orange juice. An orange juice, what's the problem with orange? Someone squeezes oranges into a bottle, and that's orange juice. Is there any kosher concern? Probably not. But you see, a third party does it, and you as a kosher consumer see this orange juice in the supermarket, and you say, I really don't know what's in that orange juice at all. It could be perfectly fine. Or, as we know, nowadays, they could be putting anything in it. They could put acids in it, they could put flavors in it, they could put even colors into the juice. Some of those colors, those who know, like sun-kissed, we all used to be able to enjoy a sun-kissed every so often, orange flavored lemonade. We can't anymore because in order to get that lovely orange color, they now put carmine, which is extracted from insects and therefore not kosher. So they can put all these things in the orange juice. Now, it may be perfectly fine, but without a third party like a kosher authority to say, we were there and we saw and it is perfectly fine, a kosher consumer says, look, it could be good, but I'd rather not buy this product or consume this product unless there's a third party, an objective third party, who's actually going to verify this product is kosher. So that's what the concept of kosher certification is. However, there's a whole raft of products, things like, as we talk about, salt and sugar and water, and which are very, very basic, and to the best of our knowledge, and the best of the knowledge of worldwide kosher authorities, they're fine. So if you look in our kosher guide, Kosher Australia Food Guide, and you'll see pretty much at the beginning of every section, so this is cereals and grains, we list all products which are, you don't have to really worry about it. So if you want to buy something like plain oats or quick oats or bran or semolina or tapioca or wheat germ, all without additives, they're pretty much, you don't have to worry about where they are. You can buy any source. So that's something which people aren't really aware of. People will go out and look for tapioca with 4 hechsherim coming from Badatz, a very fine organization, but you don't really need to worry about that because you're going to be paying a lot of money for no purpose. So that tends to add to kosher costs. So if you understand, and we list, if you look at the kosher guide, you'll see pretty much at the beginning of every section those products which you don't need to worry about getting a specific kosher source. You will actually make your shopping experience a lot easier. So we call those, by the way, there's a term, it's a very scientific term, we refer to it as, it's called Group 1 products. Every ingredient out there is classified. When we refer to products, we classify them by a group, and that's actually pretty much worldwide. Whether you're in the US or in Israel and Australia, they either refer to them as groups or categories. So, in general, if you call up Rita and ask, and Rita says, "Oh, that's a Group 1 product," you understand that's a product which does not need any special checking to be kosher. If it's, for example, she says, "Oh, that's a Group 6 product," you go, "That's not kosher because Group 6 products aren't kosher." Group 2 products need to be kosher sourced. Group 3 products need actually a kosher symbol on the packaging to be kosher. And Group 4 and 5 are reserved for bulk, tanker loads and shipping, things like that. So we just categorize that just for our benefit because it makes life a lot easier. And then when we communicate with other organizations and we share information, that makes a lot more sense to them. And pretty much the worldwide bodies which deal with kosher have actually general lists of Group 1s. Most of them really are involved with chemicals and petrochemicals and extractions of stuff which have names which go for 25 syllables and no one can pronounce the name. So that's a Group 1 product. And if you use that piece of information at the beginning of every section of the kosher guide, you'll actually make it a lot easier for yourselves when you're going through the supermarket. Now, we'll talk about the supermarket markups, but just for your general information, that makes life a lot easier, keeps costs down, which is the other part of it. So what I'd like to focus on first, while I've already mentioned the Kosher Australia Food Guide, this is, the first one was 1978, Stephen? 1978. So the Kosher Food Guide, this is the 2016 version. I'll do a comparison a little bit later on between the sizes of the 1983 one, which is the earliest one we still have a copy of, and the 2016 one, they're a little bit of a different size. Anyway, so in the Kosher Australia Food Guide, which is also replicated in the app, which I suppose most people have. Most people using the app? Guys? Yep. So we have a number of different classifications, and they, based upon what we see from the our Ask Kosher Australia Facebook page, people get a little bit confused by what we mean and what we're referring to. So we talk about products which are approved as opposed to being certified. Now, an approved product is a product which is investigated, but there's no formal relationship between us and the organizer and the manufacturer. Just at the time we checked it, it seemed to be okay, and therefore we give it an informal approval. A certified product, for example, is a little bit different. It's a product manufactured under a contract. So there's a contractual agreement verified by lawyers, signed off, which is technically actionable if the company breaks the contract. And those are certified products, which means they will not make changes unless they advise us beforehand. So we have lots of products in the book. The ones which we put a star, for example, or the ones which we put in the book as certified, usually are the ones we certify. I don't know the numbers for this year. Last year, there were about 6,500 certified products in the Kosher Australia Food Guide. Most of them, 90% of them came from Kosher Australia. Some came from our friends in New South Wales. So, in all purposes, if you read the introduction to the beginning of the Kosher Australia Food Guide, we recommend using a certified product. 2 reasons. Firstly, because we can guarantee the kashrus a lot better, because we've got a firm agreement with the company. And secondly, because it supports the company's decision. The company, by certifying, makes a commitment monetarily, a little bit of monetarily, but also commitment in changing the way they do things to make sure kosher works. And so if we buy a certified product, we're supporting the company who's basically effectively supporting the kosher consumer. So that's a good thing, because if companies don't get support, then they really won't do kosher production, because ultimately for them it's all to do with commercial benefit, and which we're trying to make it more viable for them. If they're kosher, they get better market, and we get the benefit by having kosher products. The second thing in the book we talk about is, or the second areas we talk about are Mahadran products. Now, when we say a product is a Mahadran product, now some of these concepts, by the way, don't exist overseas particularly. So if you're in Israel and you talk about Mahadran, they use the term glat. It's all to do with whether you're using a Badatz type product or a Ravlana type product as opposed to a Rabbanut type product. It's a little bit different. Over here, when we talk a Mahadran product, is the product is as kosher as we could achieve. So it could be that the bread, for example, bread is baked in an oven which we've switched on, or the product uses only Chalav Israel ingredients. Whatever it is, that's what Mahadran is. So again, it's something we encourage, because the more makes the value of the kashrus more inclusive, so more people will avail themselves of the kosher. Another concept which a lot of people seem to struggle with is the concept of dairy equipment. For example, recently we're working on some parva stuff, but we were able to approve some margarines for the first time in a long time, which were not Nuttlex. I didn't say that, sorry. But which were actually real margarines, but they're made with dairy equipment. What does dairy equipment mean? It means that the products were produced on equipment which was used to make dairy. Because it's hot production, it needs to be kashered, but the temperatures that we could get to clean the equipment were not sufficient for a kashering. So there's no trace of dairy in the product, but the water would need to be a little bit higher, or the kashering process needs to be a little bit better. So we've marked them as dairy equipment. What that means is that if you want to take your margarine and put it on a piece of bread, no problem. And you want to have the bread after you had a meat meal, no problem. But you can't put the margarine onto your chicken. Rita. You can't actually mix the margarine directly with meat, but you can definitely eat this margarine after meat. We have a few dairy equivalent products out there, and that's something which people get a bit confused about. Another thing in the book we have is, if you look at a lot of the books, a lot of the products, there'll be a superscript. Now, on the app, it doesn't appear like that. In the app, it actually tells you what that superscript means. But in the book, the superscript means where we got the information from. We believe very strongly in crediting the people who've done the work. So, for example, there's a product here a company called Brand Courts over here, which is primarily in Sydney. Their products are available, and they make cheeses, etc. They're actually supervised by the Rabbi in New South Wales. So we're very careful to mark those products with a 7, which is the superscript, which says it comes from New South Wales. Why? Because, look, they do the work, they deserve the credit. We can't take credit for other people's work. And also, it also promotes the products as well over here. So and these are just common things we get asked about the Kosher Food Guide. And the last question which I'll address about the Kosher Food Guide, because a lot of these things are covered in the app, but in the food guide they're not quite covered that way, is we give a list of reliable hechsherim. Very few places in the world when you go there and say, I think South Africa do it, the US, you won't find it there. So, because people get asked the question, I've got product, it's come from Italy, and it's got a symbol which is like an oval with a little K in it. Is that kosher? Or there's something out there which looks like there's some supervision over there, and it looks like it's got a little 1 with a K next to it. Or I've seen something, and it's from Croatia, or it's from Poland. Is it acceptable? Now, most places will go, look, we deal with our own products. I'll go ask your rabbi, and they'll tell you what it is. We actually try to answer people about the reliability of other hechsherim, not that we know inherently whether they're okay, based on information what we've gleaned from overseas. Why? Because there's so many products which you go into a supermarket which are from other supervisions, so we want to be able to allow consumers to avail themselves of these products. So if we get a question about Euro K, which is that oval with a little K inside, which is Rabbi Gorelik and Rabbi Chazan from Milan, we'll say, no problem. Or the rabbi in Croatia, we say, well, let's select products from Croatia are acceptable. The rabbi in Poland is a good hechsher. Some of the other rabbis, there's a rabbi in Italy, we basically treat on a case-by-case basis, which means what we'll do is, someone asked us, is this product okay? We will contact the rabbi involved and say, did you do anything different? Is it a normal? Is it dedicated to kosher? If it's not dedicated to kosher, what type of koshering? We'll ask them questions. Indeed, the rabbis in New Zealand, for various reasons, we've taken that approach. There's some very, very fine rabbis are very fine young men. I find that strange that I'm calling people young men nowadays. I really am getting old. So when they, for example, Rabbi Mizrachi in Wellington supervises Whitaker's chocolate. So when he sends us his kosher certificate, he'll actually send us the report. And then, at least from our side, we'll ask him questions about the parva products, about the dairy products, which dairy powders were used, which were the flavors used, so we can get a feel that he's actually covered all the bases. Not that we don't trust him, but we want to make sure that they're covered so that we can recommend his products, or the Whitaker range, which are very popular, and Sheep and Woolworths nowadays, pardon the plug, whether we can recommend them to our consumers. So that's a little bit about the Kosher Australia Food Guide. Okay. The next topic I want to just now we're going to sort of start zeroing in on actually the shopping experience. So what used to be, or at least what my parents used to do, I don't know, you remember my parents, but very well. But my parents, no longer with us, but the 60s and 70s and 80s. How do they shop? There were food guides out there. It was a little bit dicey. So how would people shop? So a lot of times, and unfortunately people still do it nowadays in some parts of the world, surprisingly it's quite encouraged almost, they would get say it's a can of baked beans, and they would look and see what's in the baked beans, and they would read the ingredients. And if they couldn't see anything offensive, they go, well, that's okay, we'll buy that. Now, of course, we would never do that. But nowadays, because of various reasons, for example, there's lots of things which are not, we look at shared equipment. For example, some of the baked beans, which used to be on the list, which we're reviewing now. The ingredients may be perfectly fine, but they're made on the same equipment as meat, and we've got to worry about whether they what type of clean takes place between the meat products and the baked beans, or, as we've discovered, when they're processed at exactly the same time in exactly the same equipment. Because the way a cannery works is called that they've got a retort. So you've got cans, and the retorts cook the product. They actually load up meat and dairy and baked beans and other stuff at the same time. So we've got to work out, is there any sequencing? Otherwise, the baked beans are not going to may not reappear. Other things which we find nowadays with labeling is there's a concept called clean labeling. A lot of companies don't really want you to know what goes in their product, because if you saw what goes in their product, you may not eat their product. It could be things to do with, for example, some of the honey companies are now coming under fire for using Chinese honey, which you would have thought they would never use. And they say, well, sometimes we use it because we've run out of local honey. So this concept it's called clean labeling. So clean labeling means they eliminate, they find a way so they don't have to actually declare things on the label. So you actually don't get to see anything. A classic example is a product we were asked to look at, which I understand a so-called kosher vegan restaurant, not under our supervision, we're quite happy to take it on. It's a type of gelato, which is made by one of the big fruit companies. And we looked at it about a year and a half ago and said, we try to make it kosher, because it looked fantastic. It looks like it's a power of a product. It sounds like it's good for vegans. Must be kosher. There's no reason why not. And we sort of dug a bit into the product, and they said, well, we've got a stabilizer there. And they said, well, it can't be kosher. And we go, why? Well, the stabilizer has a pork enzyme in it. So the fact is that you would not know, if you just read the product at the end, you say, that's not a problem with the product. But because it's a stabilizer, and as Rabbi will tell you, stabilizers can be a dover mamid, something which is intrinsic to making the product exist, keeps the product from disintegrating. So it actually, you may even can't even say it's bottled, you can't even say it's nullified. And this is backed up by a porcine enzyme. So it's kind of not kosher. It's kind of not even vegan, one would think it's not even vegan. Yet it goes and sold quite comfortably by certain vegan restaurants who are less pedantic, I suppose. So nowadays we really can't read labels. But what gets people confused? But on the other hand, products we do list as kosher, labeling also causes us problems. For example, the classic allergen warning. We get people, how often read it? Once a week? Once a day? You've marked this product as parva. It says contains nuts and milk and dairy. How could you mark it parva? And then, depending on what the nationality of the person is calling out, it's followed by some choice descriptions of how good we are, and we have to explain that is an allergen warning. There is a concept of, if there are traces of milk or nuts in a product, the companies do not want to be sued. So therefore, they put these allergen warnings, so anyone who is allergic is being pre-warned, don't touch this product. So we have those things. So, but even what would be a dairy warning of parts per million, for example? We all know Nesquik. Familiar with Nesquik? Nesquik chocolate, which we mark as a part of a product. So it's actually made in the same equipment as Milo, which is a dairy product. And they don't wash the equipment in between. Yet we mark it as a part of a product. So how can we mark it as a part of a product? So after they run the Milo, do a run of Milo, then they do a run of the Nesquik powder, which is a lot simpler. It's basically cocoa and cinnamon and some sugar and some flavors. They run it, and then they discard the first 3 or 4 dozen products which are produced. And by that time, that would have flushed out any of the Milo residue which is left over. And then they do tests. So Nestle, which produces this product in Smithtown, they do tests to see how many parts per million of dairy are there. And they roughly have between 2 to 3 parts per million. So based upon that, again, we consulted overseas because we said, whoa, there's some dairy there. They said 3 parts per million. From a kashrus perspective, it's not dairy. So we mark it as part of it. So reading labels sometimes we really say, look, reading a label doesn't help you. Follow the kosher guide in general. That'll set you right, because the reading labels, there's an art to it. There's an art to understanding it. One question which always comes up, particularly from those who are coming from the US to live in Australia or to stay here, is, and even from South Africans, why aren't there any kosher symbols on products? And we say there are. But you say, why aren't there so many? And the answer is, well, I don't know, Stephen, why aren't there any labels? A lot of times companies over here, the kosher market's so small, they don't feel that they want to put something on. They either don't want to modify their labels to include a kosher symbol. They're quite happy, listed in the kosher guide, no problem at all. But they don't want to put a symbol on their product. Other times, as we have had recently, there's a lot of kerfuffle about certain other religious certifications, and so they've made a decision, we don't put anything on our packaging. But other companies actually do. So for example, anyone who picks up a Mars product, Mars bars, Maltesers, M&Ms, Snickers, is that a Mars product? Yep, Snickers. You'll see somewhere on the packaging a Kosher Australia dairy symbol. So some companies have run with it, some companies don't. There are some products which must have a kosher symbol. For example, there's a range of soups which are made in Sydney under our supervision. Some of them actually are chicken soup. Anyone see those in the supermarket? Gary K? Yep. Wonderful. They're available in many, many stores across the country. Because they're a meat-based product, they need to carry a kosher symbol just as for a simon. So without the symbol, they wouldn't be kosher. So, but the reasoning is such. There is a reason why there's no labels. Okay. Now one of the big buzz things which we've done over the last 3 years is the symbols on the shelves. So the present count, there are 12 stores in Victoria. 13 stores in Victoria, which 13 of the supermarket stores, Coles and Woolies, who have both, well, we actually send staff in and they pull out the little shelf label and stamp it and put it back in, and we've made an effort to make a difference between dairy and parva, and we actually maintain them. It's actually, between you and me, a pain in the posterior to maintain them, because every time there's a price change, they change over the label, so we have to go in there and stamp it again. We haven't, the supermarket's not really interested in having it incorporated into a database, so it's quite a lot of work. We have, there's 3 or 4 of us who do it on a fairly regular basis to actually maintain a store. It probably takes 3 hours to go through a store which has already been set up. It takes about 12 to 15 man hours to set up a store, which we literally go through with stamping every label, which is kosher. The average Coles stores about 1,600 products, which are kosher. Woolies is around about the same, but they're a little bit different. There's less Woolies home brand products. Coles tend to be more involved in trying to get the home brand products kosher. How reliable is the symbols? Well, if it has a symbol, you can be pretty sure it's okay. If it hasn't got a symbol, it may be okay. They may have changed the label over. They may have put a price hike, and they've pulled out the label. So we try to get to every store once every 2 to 3 weeks. To be honest, that's more at the supermarket's behest, because ultimately we're charging back our time. It's not a lot of time, but we're charging back our time, and they're trying to obviously keep their costs down. So that's why it's every couple of weeks. But the supermarkets have reported, I may have mentioned this at a previous presentation, supermarkets have reported that on average, having the kosher symbol on the shelf has led to about between 11 and 15% increase in sales on each of those products. So any other supermarkets listening, it's a good deal. Sorry? The supermarkets are Balaclava, Coles Balaclava, Coles Olsen Week, Woolworths Balaclava, Woolworths Malvern, Coles Malvern, Coles Bentley, which requires an update, Coles Brighton, Woolworths Middle Brighton, Woolworths Glen Huntly, Woolworths Bentley, Woolworths South Oakley, Coles Southland, and Coles Taronga. So those are the ones which are present at the moment. There's a few smaller stores like Aunt Maggie's in Malvern, Victoria Food Palace across the road from Boobies, more or less. He's trying to do it as well. So it's becoming popular, but it is quite a little of work because it's done manually. Very little of it's done through databases. Now, being conscious of time, the question people ask us about other hechsherim. So frequently on anyone who looks on the Ask Kashrus Australia Facebook page, they'll ask us, is this hechsher okay? Now obviously there's major hechsherim which everyone's familiar with. We have a list of about 50, again being in the book, and it's I think available online now, 50 various hechsherim from around the world which we've either familiar with ourselves, or we've got information out of the US or England or Israel to say these are good hechsherim. But the question people ask us is, well, why isn't a hechsher no good? Why do you say this one is fine and this one's not fine? Why do you say this one, just check what you need to do, check on a case-by-case basis? So generally speaking, kosher is, we do it, Kosher Australia does what we do because we're a communal organisation. We feel passionately, our staff feel passionately about helping, making sure kosher consumers have food, which you can go and buy, and keeping the cost of kosher down, which I think one of the next pages will actually cover how we do that in a more practical sense. But many hechsherim are just enterprises. A rabbi wants to make a few more bucks, or it's a private business. So some of them are just that. So they either have a reputation of either actually may not even be from. They may be rabbis who just said I can cash in, and Costco has a policy to get all their products kosher as much as they can. So they'll approach us most of the time for hechsherim. Sometimes we just can't comply because the product it just won't happen. So all they want to be able to do is tick a box. Tick a box, it's kosher. So what they'll do is they'll get anyone who's prepared to tick the box, or give them a certificate or whatever, that's good enough. There are a lot of them out there. Of the 14 or 1500 hechsherim, I would say probably half of them are in that role of, hey, we're just ticking a box, and the hechsher is not really worth the effort. Those cases we just don't even check. We just say, look, this extra is not reliable. Sorry. Others, the guys are serious. They may either be inexperienced. I mean, kashrus is not for the faint-hearted. There's a number of rabbis which we are sort of giving training to at the moment have discovered. You need to know what you're talking about. You need to understand how equipment operates, how to deal with people, how to deal with ingredients, etc. So they just may not know. I mean, they're serious people. They want to do the right thing. They do to the best of their knowledge. Or that they've taken on. They may be a single rabbi in an area where they're dealing with a thousand factories, and you just can't handle it. And so forced to take shortcuts. So in those cases, we actually say, the guys are okay, but we need to double check that they've done the right thing. So we may ask them, could you tell us what you've done, as we have a case in Italy. Or we may have a scenario where we contact the company. They say they give kosher. We ask the company, could you tell us what the rabbi did? Don't give us too many details, but give us enough details so we can make a value assessment. So we ask these questions of both sides, and if we can ascertain a degree of comfort that they've done the right thing, we're happy to recommend the product to consumers over here. I suppose we're a little bit like gatekeepers. What we don't do, what Kosher Australia doesn't do, is we don't comment on the policies of other people to say whether they're a valuable policy or that, they've done the wrong thing or they've done the right thing. We just say, look, we don't know enough, we're not comfortable enough to provide information, and we leave it at that. It is poor form, actually, to comment about how other hechsherim do, even if they're not reliable. Almost done. So, one of the things my friends, I do have some friends left, my friends who invite me over for a Shabbos meal or a Yom Tov meal hate, is I have this tendency to go into their cupboards and have a look and see what's there. They don't like that because I always find something. In fact, I always find something in my own cupboard. I go, how did that get there? That's why Chris, who used to work for us, used to benefit a lot from my Sunday afternoon spring cleanings, because she can tend to score a lot of products which shouldn't have been in my cupboard either. So we've identified 7 reasons why people who are serious about kashrus and want to keep kosher, have products in their home which may not be kosher. The first one is they don't understand what the kosher product is. For example, Bane of our Resistance, lovely people we deal with at SPC. They are really nice people, but they don't want to put kosher symbols on, and the only way we can identify certain products as being kosher by reading their complicated terminology, their barcodes. So I'm sure everyone has the experience of calling up and saying, is this SPC product kosher? And we go, turn it over, have a look at the top of the thing, read the second line, the first 5 characters of the other date code. What does the first character say? It's an M. M means it was made in 2013. It's 2014. No, 2013, sorry. Is it a P or it was made in 2016? What does the 5th character say? S. Oh, that means it was made in Shepparton. Well, that product, because it's made in Shepparton, isn't acceptable. However, if it had an M on it, means it was made in Marupna, which has now been shut down. But in the past, well, that's okay. It frustrated so many consumers, it's not funny. So, I mean, once you get used to it, you get used to it. But it's sometimes a bit difficult. Or there's a number of products where a slight word change is the product which is kosher, and a different ordering of the words, the product is not kosher. Anyone familiar with Tandaka yeast? So some of the yeasts are kosher, some of them are not. But the names are so close to one another, I get confused which one's okay. So it's not understanding what the listing is. Because we haven't got symbols, the symbol on the shelf helps, but because there are no symbols in the packaging, people get confused. So that's one reason why. Another reason is that people get confused by, well, in Melbourne they do this, in Sydney they do that, in Western Australia they do this, in the US they do that. they get confused and think, well, hang on, I've just been visiting my family member in London, and they always buy all these products. And we know in London, no one worries about whether it's always kosher. I said, well, that's fine in England, but in Australia, for example, if you're in England, most of the local Australian will say, canned fruit with sugar syrup, no problems. We know better. We have canned fruit and sugar syrup made on the same equipment as chicken soup. So it's not so simple, or the same equipment as grape juice. So without cleaning, so it's very difficult. So people don't understand the different rulings coming from different cities or different countries. Or they forget the third reason is that they don't realize the product is not kosher. A classic, we get all the time. People call up and say, can I buy Medley margarine? And we go, what? Medley margarine. It's kosher. When did you last look at a kosher card? 1995. Things don't change, do they? It hasn't been kosher since forever. So products get deleted and people are not aware of the changes, and therefore they continue to buy because people don't realize that things change. And that's, yes sir.
When they do make changes, they always notify Kosher Australia, or?
Most of the time, so the companies mostly do let us know, and then we let people know. But it's not that, because there's no symbols on packaging, it's not always that easy for consumers to realize it. So if it's not got a symbol, that's what we tell people, recheck all the time. Familiarize yourself. We'll put out lists which will list out what's been deleted. Mostly products get discontinued, but sometimes they actually get deleted. For example, Tableland's margarine, which was the big one last year, it actually is really trafe. I mean, for those who think we're just, and sometimes, we're being a bit over the top, the current product has actual real trafe in it, up to 3%. Means you would need to kosher your kalim, your utensils if you cooked with it, for example. It really, so anyway, products get deleted. We try to put it out there. We do it a few times. We try to explain it. The information doesn't always get through. Fourth reason is, I bought it because the storekeeper said it was fine. I was at someone's store, and the lady at the counter said it's perfectly fine. And I believed her. And we said, well, what are they going to tell you? They're stocking it. They want to sell it to a kosher consumer. They're going to tell you it's not kosher. Of course they're going to tell you it's kosher. Or we have even the better scenario where we ask the store, why are you selling the product? You're a kosher store. Why are you selling this product? And they say, the manufacturer told us it was kosher. We say, did you ask for kosher certificate? No. But he said it was kosher. We've dealt with him for years. He would never give us a bum steer. Except one or two times. The sixth reason is, we heard it was kosher. We heard it. The rumor mill said it was kosher. I mean, it's not right. No. Or the best one. And the best one is, I was at someone's place, and they're really, 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 really from. And they had it in their cupboard, so it must be okay. So those are pretty typical reasons why people have stuff in their cupboards which may not be 100%. So what can we do? So one of the things, there's a different one. One of the reasons, how to, I suppose, the active thing we do for keeping kosher easier, aside from the supermarket shelf labeling and promotional work, is primarily to make more products kosher, to make locally available products which you go in the supermarket. The more they're kosher, the easier it is to keep kosher. That's how it's easy to keep kosher. If we tell you you've only got one brand of yogurt and one brand of potato chips and one brand of bread and one brand of fruit juice, it's going to be pretty hard to shop kosher unless you're living in the bagel belt. So the way to do it is to get, more products kosher. And that's what we do actively. We try to get as much out there so that when you go to a supermarket, you have, like as I say, typical Coles, they stock maybe 15,000 SKUs, 15,000 different products, of which 10% are kosher. I mean, that's like in Australia. How big is the kosher? How big is the kosher market? It's massive. It's massive for those watching, but it's not that big. Yet 10% of all products in a standard supermarket stocked is kosher. That itself is making shopping kosher a lot easier. The other thing is our feedback. We're very fortunate that 2 weeks ago we had this story with Jalna. That was the consequence of a few things, but primarily it was consumers feeding back. The company themselves said that they were sensitive to feedback. That was one of the reasons why they decided to terminate kosher and other certification in the first place, because they were very sensitive to negative feedback. Well, as kosher consumers, all of a sudden they went from having no concern, no one complaining, to this massive of people who were, on the whole, a few were not what I would do, but on the whole, very positive feedback from consumers saying your product, we've lived with your product for the last 40 years as kosher consumers. Once your product is no longer kosher, we cannot partake. We are real customers of yours. That was one example. Another example was, if those people who, some of you guys will remember, Nestle, when they decided to stop all kosher programs, only because of some internal costing issue. And basically the feedback to the company was to the Vegemite as well. Nestle was about, those who don't remember, about 2007, Nestle decided they didn't need kosher anymore. And they told us, it was the feedback from consumers, basically encouraged them to say, well, look, we've got to do this because actually real consumers out there who want kosher. It's not just, making me happy or making Kashrus Oliver happy. It's they're real consumers out there, and it's good from their perspective, it's good for the public. Or Mars putting a kosher symbol on packaging. Or, as Rita mentioned, Vegemite getting a kosher symbol on the packaging when Michael Danby got up in Parliament and declared that the national food is not kosher. How could that be? So what we can do is maybe, in South Africa, I'm told, there are groups of consumers who actually are kosher calling bees. And they contact companies to say, we want your products kosher. See, consumers, we can contact many, many companies. Out of 100 companies which I contact, and I do actively contact companies, maybe 2 or 3 will go kosher. But when consumers en masse contact the company, they see there is demand. Demand means more sales. More sales means if I have to be kosher to get those sales, I'll weigh it up, and probably, in many cases, I'll do it, because the cost of kosher entry is very low, particularly in Australia. So, the last thing I'd just like to mention, how we actually have made keeping kosher shopping a lot easier, is, I haven't got access to the office now, but see, this is the Kosher Food Guide, 2016. If I take out the bits about Tfilas Kalim, so the product bits go for 340 pages. 2003, that's 10 years ago, or 13 years ago. How many pages? Anyone want to venture a guess? Anyone? Sorry? No. 2003 was 138 pages. 1983, we have a book there. It went for 69 pages. So we kind of, and the writing there is a lot smaller, a lot bigger than the writing is. I get complaints all the time the writing is too small. So just to give you an idea, that's how kosher shopping is made easier, not made easy, but made easier by having more products out there. Okay, so that's pretty much, I could offer you to follow. If you want to shadow me around, my Sunday morning shopping, you're quite welcome, but don't know if it's particularly exciting these days. Though I did have someone who asked me a few months ago to do that. Anyway, is there any questions anyone wants to ask or?
If somebody comes off the list, is the app updated?
Yes.
Then?
Pretty much as quickly as we possibly can. In fact, if it's serious enough to come off the list because there's a problem with the Kashrus, it'll come off immediately. Then there'll be an update sent through the app. So we'll do it as soon as we confirm that we're going to take it. We will. So we try to send out emails, but certainly the app will come off and it'll go, and we'll try to send out emails together with the Facebook update as well. Yes, sir.
What's the order of priority if you have something that's say kosher from book, then there's like label, then there's like barcode sticker, like book doesn't get updated.
Of course.
Like there's an iPhone app, is that the latest? Like what's the
Most
most
updated bit. The social media and the soft copy. That's about the best thing you can do. So that'll if you've got the app, be it the iPhone app or the Android app, no BlackBerry app. Sorry, Stephen. That gets updated as soon as we can't. Particularly if something is not kosher, and we try our darndest not to lose products. Sometimes we just cannot help it. Cereally ice cream. The problem we had over there, it's made by a third party which we visit, and we basically said, look, we need to have the ingredients, and the company refused to provide us with those ingredients. They were previously listed by another organisation who had not really checked the product in quite a while, and so when we actually asked information, they just refused to give us. So we said, look, we just don't know. It could be perfectly fine, but if we don't know, we really can't recommend something we don't know about. So that's why that. Yeah, but you've got the Dairy Bell has come back with a vengeance, and then more of the varieties there. The hold-up, generally the problem with the ice cream in Australia is the use of milk powders which aren't kosher. So unfortunately, while a lot of the milk powder is kosher, some of the major manufacturers aren't kosher at this stage, and they need to change. So when they're starting to say, sometimes they'll use the kosher milk powder, sometimes they won't use the kosher milk powder, and particularly the lower end market ice creams tend to be using the non-kosher milk powders. We desperately are trying to get, if we could get all of them in sync and all of them kosher, then the dairy industry would open up, just like we opened up all the oil industry the last couple of years, and previously all the flavour industry. So we've got a number of industries where it's really easy to get kosher, but once you come with dairy powders, it becomes a little bit more complicated. Is there any other questions, observations, wish lists?
Sometimes you've got a product that's kosher in a certain size.
Yes.
But another size.
Yes.
Because again, the kashrus thing about.
Well, for example, you're probably doing something like Lego's tomato paste, right? So the company which manufactures the tomato paste, they also manufacture meat products on similar lines. So for the small packaging, they actually there's no meat products going through the small lines. The bigger line, so the sachets, totally no problem whatsoever. We give it a hechsher. The tubs, share equipment. The rabbi wasn't happy because it's pretty good, but not quite good enough. So we didn't want to say it's under certification. And then the jars and the bigger containers, it's on for the young and old. So we have tried. We will always try. We go there every year. It's out in Echuca. We go there every year, and we talk to them about the same things, and they go, "No, we don't want to change, and it's not worth our while." But we'll do it again next year, and God willing, we'll do it again for until they agree to us. We won't stop. Okay, I think we've covered it. We've lost the rabbis, I suppose. It was that exciting. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for coming out on a cold winter night with a very juicy topic. I think the next one's actually a lot. The youngsters took themselves the better topics. You know, what goes wrong in the kitchen? What can we do there? And checking for bugs. They gave me the driest topic. I usually do the topic about the icky things which go into your food, like carmine and human parts and things like that, which people don't know about. Which, if you really want to know, you probably ate some today. Okay, thanks a lot.